We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the Wadawurrung people, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
This is the HSR Podcast brought to you by WorkSafe Victoria, helping you achieve better health and safety outcomes in your workplace. It's Chris McKenzie, your host, and thanks for joining me for another episode in this series as we hear from industry experts and leaders in OH&S, offering you advice, guidance and support on a range of topics. So, who are we? WorkSafe is Victoria's occupational health and safety regulator and workers' compensation insurer. To put it simply, our job is to reduce workplace harm and improve outcomes for injured workers. We're here to educate, support and guide Victorian workplaces to provide a safe environment and hold employers to account if they fail to protect their workers. But WorkSafe can't be everywhere all at once, and that's why the role of HSRs, that's health and safety representatives, is so important. They play a crucial role in getting Victorian workers home safe at the end of each day. In the last few episodes, we've heard all about how health and safety representatives are elected, what powers they have, and what obligations employers have towards them. If you've missed any of the first 6 episodes in this series, make sure to hit the links on the page to catch up. And in this podcast, we're going to be joined by WorkSafe's Director of Health, Safety and Wellbeing in People and Culture, Kristine Gatt, to discuss a topic that's relevant to all Victorian employers, and that is how to resolve occupational health and safety issues in a workplace. Welcome, Kristine.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you've got an interest in HSRs in particular.
So I'm the Director of Health, Safety and Wellbeing here at WorkSafe within People and Culture. And one of the things that I learned early in my career when it came to health and safety representatives was that they are the eyes and ears out there in the organisation, hearing about safety concerns or issues being raised by the other employees in the organisation. So it was important as I sort of grew in my roles over the years to engage with HSRs as much as possible in order to create a safety system that was really effective for all. So I've always engaged with HSRs, and I think as time has progressed, I've become better and better at doing that because I realised the importance of them.
And the resolution of health and safety issues in workplaces is such an important topic for all employers and employees, including HSRs, as there's really no workplace that doesn't have at least one health and safety issue.
Oh, I think health and safety issues are everywhere and they're just live all the time, aren't they? So it's really important to understand your role as a part of the process in issue resolution when it comes to health and safety matters. So the HSRs may hear of something going on in the workplace, but it's how they go about reporting that and feeling safe and confident to do so that is really a must for organisations. And then to have a process that is followed, well recognised by senior leaders in the organisation and committed to. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. What types of things would be considered a health and safety issue in a workplace, Kristine?
Oh, it can be really varied, and increasingly as time goes on, I recognise the overlay between industrial relations and health and safety these days. So it can be your typical, it can be, things that pertain to plant and equipment or physical, like the environment that we're actually living in day to day. But increasingly, we're actually seeing that when we talk about safety, we're also talking about psychological safety. So somebody feeling really good about coming to work for that day and ensuring that they are not going to be presented with anything in that workplace which makes them feel unsafe, closes them down so that they can't discuss what might be going on for them. And people often talk about bringing your whole self to work. I don't know that I agree with that personally. I think, you choose what you bring to your workplace. But if you want to have an open conversation about mental health or safety, you should be able to do that.
Absolutely. And lots of workplaces have issue resolution procedures and grievance procedures. But what makes the OH&S issue resolution procedure so specific or special?
We have it in our WorkSafe guidance material, and if an organisation doesn't have an issue resolution procedure that they've agreed to adhere to, then you default to utilising the legislation as a way of managing through an issue in the workplace.
And that can be quite technical. So let's bring in WorkSafe's Manager of Industry and Representation Support, Anita Ford, to give us some specifics.
An agreed procedure is an agreed process or outline of steps to be used in resolving a health and safety issue in the workplace. The agreed procedure should provide practical guidance and aim to facilitate a timely and effective resolution. So it's not good enough for a workplace to just assume that it's an agreed procedure. The agreed procedure needs to meet the following 4 criteria. It must be agreed. It must outline the process or steps for resolving issues, not just raising them. And it needs to facilitate the resolution of the issue, not merely just set out a process to notify people. The agreed procedure must relate to health and safety issues. So, unless people agree, it cannot be just, for example, a grievance or a complaint procedure. It needs to be specific to health and safety issues. And it must be consistent with the OHS Act 2004. For example, it cannot include an agreement to remove any powers of a HSR to issue a PIN or exercise any of their other powers. So, if your procedure in your workplace doesn't meet any of these criteria, it is not considered by WorkSafe to be an agreed procedure.
Thanks, Anita. So anything to add to that, Kristine?
I think it's really important to understand that sometimes it's even the simplest things which are raised by HSRs that need acknowledgement and a response. So I remember very clearly I was in what would be referred to as an OHS committee meeting. We call them health, safety and wellbeing committees. And one of the HSRs raised that they were a bit concerned about some of the glassware which had been introduced into our new head office. And I know at the time they felt rather cautious about raising it and perhaps a bit self-conscious about it, but they raised it. And what that created was a response where we actually worked through a gradual replacement of all the glassware in head office because the glassware was too thin, and as it was going into dishwashers, it was breaking, and unbeknownst to anyone, a few people had actually cut themselves on the broken glasses. Now, an HSR has to feel comfortable and confident to raise that and to know that something's going to be done about it. And they were able to take it back to their designated work group to say, hey, I mentioned it, something's being done about it. What that does is that sets a culture where HSRs do start to feel confident about raising issues, no matter how big or small. You don't just want to be hearing about the big things. You set your culture by addressing the smaller things along the way, so that people feel comfortable that something will be done about it should things escalate. So you have to step through a process, and you also have to feed back that something's been done.
And you speak about the culture in a workplace, which is really important, and everyone in a workplace has a role to play in that culture. What about managers? Are they kind of stuck in the middle there, Kristine?
Look, managers play a really important role. I remember when I was younger working in safety environments where people would dismiss issues that were raised, and it was often taken to a manager who at the time would just make a value judgment on whether they thought something was important or not. Nowadays, I'm very grateful to work in an organisation where, of course, we have a lot of very great health and safety professionals working here at WorkSafe, so I'm a bit blessed that way. But managers play a really important role in that anything that is brought to them needs to be treated seriously. So managers need to be well trained in what it is that they need to do when an HSR comes to them with a concern. And I think we're still on a journey at WorkSafe, even ourselves. Managers sometimes fall into the trap of sort of just making a value judgment, and we have support processes for them. But I think slowly we're improving, as I hope many employers out there are, in that we're training up our managers so that they understand their roles should an HSR come to them. And then they have to be a part of the issue resolution process. So stepping through what is the issue, talking to as many people as possible to find a way forward.
And that includes speaking to the employees who may be affected by the health and safety matter, doesn't it?
It does. So true. So the more people that can be engaged with around any issue which might be raised, that's the key to finding a really positive outcome. One of the mistakes that I've seen made is people will just surround themselves by those that they know who will agree with them. And I've always said, as does sort of anyone in this area of, safety, you've got to engage as many unusual voices as you can. And there's a reason for that, because you don't want to come up with a solution which is then questioned and other people will feel that they haven't been engaged in the process. So it's up to managers, management, senior leaders, and someone of a decent level of seniority in an organisation to really oversee and engage in the resolution of whatever it is that's being mentioned.
What happens if an employer and their employees, including their HSRs, can't reach an agreement or bring a resolution to an issue?
That's always the tricky part. So you will get to a point where people may all sit there and just disagree and you can't find a way forward. I'm going to go down that track now to say that that's where you would want to bring in the regulator as WorkSafe to oversee whatever it is that you're trying to deal with at the time.
And what about if there's an immediate threat to health and safety? Is that a similar situation where WorkSafe can come in and assist?
That's a really important one, and that is something that a lot of people don't understand. So HSRs can call a cessation of work. And the classic that I always recall in my history was a situation in a manufacturing plant where an HSR found that some plant was not secured to the floor of manufacturing floor, and they called it out by realising that every other like piece of equipment had also not been secured to the floor, and they called a cease work. Of course, nobody in management likes to see suddenly their whole operation come to a stop. So it was a very, very difficult time. But management at that time, fortunately, were able to lean in and realised that it was creating a serious safety hazard. So they fixed it. It took a good 24 hours. And when you've got a 24-hour operation, that costs money. But we're talking about people's lives here, life and limb in this situation. So, there are times an HSR needs to feel empowered that they can do that. And then where they're not getting the response that they need to see, well, obviously there are methods for them to alert management that they need something done. And I would expect that any HSR that feels empowered to do so, and everyone should feel empowered, that they would enact what is their right.
And just in general, Kristine, would you have some words for anyone out there thinking about becoming an HSR?
Just do it. Don't think about it. We need as many people leaning into this space as possible. We still have an unacceptable rate of injury in Victoria. We need to get better. It's up to health and safety representatives to embrace their role and to understand that it's every little thing that they do that will make a difference. And you could ultimately be saving someone's life.
Thanks for joining us, Kristine.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
That was Kristine Gatt, WorkSafe's Director of Health, Safety and Wellbeing in People and Culture, with some really helpful information about resolving health and safety issues in your workplace. So to recap, as we heard, promptly addressing an OHS issue with the relevant people affected can increase the chance the matter is resolved efficiently and effectively. Those involved in the issue, that's employers and employees, must attempt to resolve the issue in accordance with an agreed procedure. And if there is no agreed procedure, Part 2.2 of the OHS regulations provides for issue resolution procedures and must be used. And when there's an immediate threat to health and safety, prompt consultation has to take place. For further information on today's topic, you can check out the guidance links in the text below. This has been another episode of the HSR Podcast brought to you by WorkSafe Victoria, helping achieve better health and safety outcomes in your workplace. Next time, we're going to find out more about discrimination against HSRs. Until then, if you have any OHS issues or concerns, or to lodge a case, you can contact WorkSafe's advisory service on 1800 136 089. You can also head to the WorkSafe website to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, sharing news, events and resources specifically for HSRs. And if you are an HSR in Victoria, WorkSafe has dedicated support officers available whenever you need help. Just email hsro@worksafe.vic.gov.au.
Please note, this information is based on laws applying in Victoria only. It is correct at the time of recording, but is not to be relied upon as legal advice. This episode does not outline all the legal obligations under Victoria's occupational health and safety laws.